In recent weeks, gold and Bitcoin have become extremely popular topics in the media. Gold is nearing all-time highs, while Bitcoin exploded to well over $40,000 a coin. This incredible battle between old and new led many to ask the question, where is the future of wealth preservation? A question that led to an epic debate between two prominent figures in financial media. Chamath, a billionaire investor, has been pushing his bullish BTC sentiment all over CNBC, especially in his last January 4th interview where he stated this.
All right, Chamath, we don't have that much time left. Let's talk rocket ships. First, Bitcoin. That falls into that category because that's what that is. 39,000. Where's it going?
I mean, can you play the clip in 2012 and 13 when it was at 200 and everybody was laughing at me on CNBC every time I would talk about Bitcoin? Where is it going? It's probably going to 100, then 150, then 200,000. In what period? I don't know. 5 years, 10 years, but it's going there. And the reason is because every time you see all of this stuff happening, it just reminds you that, wow, our leaders are not as trustworthy and reliable as they used to be.
This appearance led to a tweet by infamous gold bug David Schiff calling out Chamath on his rather bullish sentiment on Tesla, a separate subject altogether. But it was Chamath's response that got the party going. With 3 words, he responded like this. Not exactly what you would expect from a billionaire, but this was just the beginning. The conversation moved to Bitcoin next, and this is where things heated up. But before we move there, we have to understand that this David Schiff gold versus Chamath Bitcoin debate extends back some time. Peter has been vocal about his investments in gold going back to the early 2010s. His primary argument is laid out here in this December 2019 interview for The Street. Take a listen.
Peter, let's talk gold now. Last time we spoke, you said that inflation could drive gold to $5,000 with more money being pumped into the financial system in the form of repos. Can we expect the monetary base to expand and push inflation up soon?
Well, it is expanding. I mean, that technically is the inflation. The Fed is doing quantitative easing again, QE4. Now, they don't want to call it QE4, right, but that's exactly what it is. I mean, there's no difference between what they're doing now and what they were doing when they did call it QE, except when they had QE, at least there was like an official policy to do it. Now they're just doing it. But they've actually assured the markets that even though it's not QE, they're going to keep doing it pretty much indefinitely. And so the Fed's balance sheet is growing, money supply is growing, interest rates are artificially low. So there is a lot of inflation. In fact, the Fed has now officially come out and really changed its mandate, because the mandate was 2% inflation, but now they're saying we need to have higher inflation than 2% because we have to make up for all the years when it was less than 2%, which is all a bunch of nonsense.
As you can tell, Peter is confident that due to excessive money printing, inflation will be on the rise. The problem with this is that inflation since 2012, according to the United States Federal Reserve, has remained under 2%, and in 2019 it finalized at 1.8%. In fact, the last time the United States had inflation past 5% was 30 plus years ago in 1990. But for one reason or another, in that same time period, the price of gold per ounce has indeed skyrocketed regardless of this low inflation. This chart produced by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis shows how gold prices exploded, going from about $265 an ounce in 2001 to well over $1,800 an ounce in January of 2020. Later in the interview, Schiff explains why he believes gold prices haven't really kept up with the giant spikes we've seen in Bitcoin price in recent years. He claimed at the time that this was because the market wasn't properly pricing the US dollar. Remember, this was December 2019, and he was making this prediction at a time where the dollar was relatively strong. Take a listen.
You know, you've been a long-term gold a bull here, Peter. So when you say it's going to take off, what are you expecting for 2020? Let's talk about the first 6 months.
Well, as you said, I've been bullish for a long time. Of course, I started recommending gold to my clients when it was under $300 an ounce. So, you know, at around $1,500, we're up about 5-fold since those lows. So there's no way of knowing. I mean, it's, you know, I'm surprised. I mean, had you asked me 10 years ago, where would the price of gold be today? I wouldn't have guessed 1,500. I would have thought it would have been higher by now. So it's always hard to know. You know, I think the price of gold is going up next year, right? So I want to own it. but I don't know how much it's going to go up. But I do believe that once we really start to take off, I mean, gold could go from 1,500 to 2,000 very quickly. It can go from 2,000 to 3,000 or 4,000 very quickly. Because I think what a lot of people suddenly realize, what they should have known for years, and you see the herd all at once scrambling to try to buy some gold because hardly anybody owns it now, the price can go up very, very rapidly. So the key is to own your gold before that stampede so you don't get trampled, as everybody else is bidding it up.
This actually proved to be right. The US dollar has since declined. The DXY, which measures the dollar's strength relative to other major world currency, has declined from 98 to about 90, and this change was reflected in the price of gold. But the change in price is relative. Since December 16, 2019, or the date of the interview, the price of Bitcoin has changed as well, going from about $7,300 a coin to $35,000 as of the making of this video. This is a 476% gain. If we compare to gold prices, which went from $1,462 an ounce to $1,839, this is about a 20% gain. Bitcoin is winning the battle, but will it win the war? Long term, there are many arguments to be made. Greats like Warren Buffett have called BTC rat poison, while others have praised the cryptocurrency as a revolution that will change the finance world altogether. Chamath's primary arguments are laid out in this interview at Coin Summit. Just take a listen to what he says about Buffett's comments and why he thinks the greatest investor in the world is dead wrong.
He was addressing Warren Buffett's criticism of Bitcoin as a mirage, and he said something like, well, my handwriting isn't clear enough to make out what exactly he said. You guys probably know, but it was something akin to comparing him to other old white men who don't understand new technology. I wonder what you thought of Warren's statement, and frankly, can you do any better than Mark on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's the best. We got old white men are the best, right? We got Buffett on one side, we got Perkins on the other. They're both kind of good at something, but they're both kind of crazy at other things.
Yeah, okay.
I think he's probably generally true. Look, the reality is...
You think Warren is generally right?
No, I think Mark's right.
Okay, Mark.
But as a general statement, the general statement, which is true, is that we all tend to be dismissive or negative of things we don't fundamentally understand. And I think it's reasonable for a guy who's made $50-60 billion by owning things like Coca-Cola and Gillette to not understand Bitcoin. And forget the last 13 years of tech as well, which he's also completely ignored. But he's allowed to do that, and he's very successful in his own right. Just like I don't know why I would buy Coca-Cola or Gillette. It just makes no sense to me.
Sure, but
so I'm just as crazy as he is.
Sure, but he has a record of being a pretty savvy, analyzer of financial instruments. I would give him a little more credit than that.
No. My point is there are lots of ways to make money, and this is actually a really good point. So.
Chamath makes great points. Bitcoin does indeed have the potential to revolutionize finance, remove barriers, stabilize unstable third world economies, and remove excess fees. But there is an alternative reality and a different side to the coin, pun intended. While crypto investors are some of the most cult-like personalities on the internet, I think it's very positive to look at things from both sides of the issue. Bitcoin does indeed have problems. The most important, I think, is fear of government intervention or regulation. There is nothing stopping a superpower from outlawing its presence in the legitimate economy. The US could very easily come out with a government-backed crypto similar to BTC as a way to digitize its currency. Many don't like to hear that, but countries like China have already begun on work like this, and I'm certain many others will follow. If there is one thing the government loves to control, it's their population's currency use. These risks were outlined in a great interview. Take a listen to this clip.
Bitcoin, in fact, rallying over the weekend and the Christmas holiday. But in this boom market, it is now facing a crackdown from regulators seeking to impose rules for crypto wallets and stablecoins. Joining us now is Circle CEO Jeremy Allaire. Jeremy, great to have you with us. Is there any concern, Jeremy, that a stablecoin's place in this ecosystem will be displaced, especially when you take a look at China, which just launched its second pilot program by the PBOC to give residents digital yuan effectively. If the U.S. Treasury, if the Fed decided to enter such a pilot program and conduct that, then where does that leave U.S. dollar coin or the role of a stable coin?
Yeah, I mean, if you look right now, the attention, coming out of the White House with the Presidential Working Group, coming out of the G20, G7, who built, a set of policy recommendations around global stablecoins like USDC and the proposed, forthcoming stablecoins from Diem. But I think the here and the now is that private sector actors acting in consortium are building standards, and they're building the rigorous governance that's needed, the technical infrastructure that's needed, the security models, the compliance models. So there's an enormous amount of work happening in the private sector, primarily in the West, to build this out as a legitimate market infrastructure, and it's growing really, really fast. There's research that goes on within government agencies, but I think if you look at the history of electronic money, at least in the West, it is a history of consortiums of private sector actors getting together to build standards and interoperability, whether it's SWIFT, card networks, ACH networks, and now stablecoins. So I think the predominant form of digital currency, fiat digital currency that we're going to see widely circulating and being used is very likely going to be, driven by these kinds of arrangements.
Bitcoin versus gold. The debate will rage on, but unlike most of those in the comments raging against me, Schiff, or Chamath, I will be playing both sides, owning both gold miners and Bitcoin in a portion of my portfolio that will surely guarantee gains if either rises to the top. Thank you guys for watching, and please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed.